turret that was taken is definitely not a mid lane turret, however.
It is absolutely not a mid lane turret because they have not lost a singular mid lane turret all split yet. It has been...
Anything surprise you on that scoreboard right there?
Dignitas over Immortals, I think. Team Solo mid over 100 Thieves is totally kind of a good pick, but Dignitas over Immortals. Immortals is a stronger team than I think they showed in that matchup.
This is day 2 results. Evil Geniuses defeating Team Liquid. 100 Thieves getting by Golden Guardians. Not a great week for Golden Guardians after they were looking strong, even as late as last week.
Yeah, they were on the upswing. They kind of pulled ahead a little bit. They started to look good on paper because they have a lot of really good names in that team. Haunter in the top lane. And they just ended up not, like you said, looking good this week. 100 Thieves bounced back from their loss and ended up taking that win, so that's good for them. Immortals had a tough cookie to crack with Cloud9 in their second match after losing in their first match, and that's never going to be easy. But FlyQuest still looking good. I mean, Counterlogic Gaming is Counterlogic Gaming. They did make that sub for Pobelter in the mid lane, which I think we'll talk about in a little bit. But, you know, FlyQuest is a really exciting team overall, and I'm excited to talk about them.
Well, FlyQuest is second in the standings. In fact, Birdnorth in the chat says FlyQuest definite top 3 by end of the split. They are 7-3 right now, occupying that second position.
I mean, that was one of our predictions from one of our analysts that'll join us later, actually put FlyQuest in the top 3 for the end of the split. So I totally agree. I love watching this team play. They're a little chaotic. They're a little loose. They make a lot of mistakes, but they also capitalize on the things that come their way. And you saw some of that in their matches this weekend. Immortals 5-5. I believe that's largely off the back of Smithy.
This is the bottom 5 right here. Golden Guardians now at 4-6. Counterlogic Gaming just can't get out of the basement.
No, 1-9. But you know, the one that's right above them, 3-6, is the one we did not expect to see. Which again, we'll talk about Team Liquid later, but Counterlogic...
It's kind of funny, right, when you look at this. If you were to tell Counterlogic Gaming before the season started that they would be 1 place behind Team Liquid, they'd be very happy.
Oh, of course. Of course they would. You'd be like, oh, crap, we're going to be 2 or 3? Yeah, no. I think anyone would have been. And if you would have been told Team Liquid, hey, you're going to be 1 spot behind Evil Geniuses, they would have been like, wait, what?
What? What are you talking about? A lot of people mentioning things in the chat. Appreciate you. Keep on sending us questions because I'm going to be collecting them, and we will definitely be asking a lot of questions throughout the show. This is a 90-minute program. We are live, by the way. And yes, we are. For people in Twitch chat asking where can we watch this, once again, it's Twitch, on YouTube, on the ESPN app, and on Twitter. So
people on Twitch are asking where they can watch it?
Well, people are asking, can we also watch it on YouTube? And
oh, okay.
Yes, you can watch it.
Because that'd be funny to be like, oh, you're in Twitch.
They're also flaming you for getting the Evil Geniuses pick incorrect.
I don't remember
you
that.
You should know this, okay? Like, I got your back.
No, okay. But I don't remember that. It's in the past.
Don't.
I look forward. I'm a present to future person. So I'm looking forward to Monday Night League tonight.
Yep.
Looking forward to our conversation.
We got a lot to talk about, and I'm looking forward to actually bringing in Los Angeles. Emily Rand is here with us live from LA. Emily and I actually were in Atlanta this weekend covering Call of Duty. All of that content is available on our YouTube channel, by the way. Tons of interviews. Emily wrote a lot, but now we're focusing on League of Legends. Let's start with Counterlogic Gaming, Emily. Let's start with Pobelter. Yes. He had a weekend with CLG. He was very happy, as he tweeted, that to be back on stage. He seemed very happy about it. And he says in his tweet, quote, "This season is very comebackable." That is the word that Pobelter used. Do you agree that Pobelter can help CLG's chances to even get into a good spot going into the summer?
So in terms of can Pobelter help CLG, I think the answer is yes. And I actually think we already saw some of how he can help CLG this past weekend, even though, again, they had kind of a rough weekend results-wise. Can he get them into a good position for the rest of the split? I'm not exactly sure about that. I do want to talk about some of his performances with the team this past week. We saw him up against C9, where I think a lot of people will just kind of look at that game and they'll be like, okay, you can automatically punt that game anyway because it's C9 and they're doing so well. But what actually ended up happening was a really rough level 1 for Wiggly, where they late invaded. They took all of his birds, his Raptors camp, and they set him really significantly behind. He was still only level 2 at about 4 minutes. It was a really rough showing for him specifically. So when that happens, your lanes have to play a lot less aggressively. You can't do much with that because you know your jungler is behind, so you know they have to farm in order to recover. So that was a great move by C9, again showing why they're the best team in North America. So that game, I really feel like you can't pin on Pobelter. I don't even necessarily feel like you can pin it on Wiggly. It was just they were going up against a significantly better team, and it was demonstrated as early as level 1. Against FlyQuest, I thought CLG actually looked a lot better. Darren mentioned that FlyQuest are kind of a bit of a fast and loose team. They make a lot of mistakes, but they're very fun to watch. They want to be really aggressive, and one of their hallmarks is that when they go in, or when the opposing team goes in, they kind of all like to show up, right? Like they like to TP. PoE will rotate bot sometimes, and he did that in this game because he was Corki into Pobelter's Azir. And so I think another thing that we saw in this game is that Pobelter was really trying to help the team, and CLG was in this early. However, with that matchup, what PoE can do is just constantly push out the wave as Corki. So a lot of that was also matchup based as well, and then it just came down to more individual mistakes. I mean, CLG actually did look a bit stronger in terms of objective control, and I think that's really where you see the fact that they have Pobelter, who is not losing the majority of his laning matchups. Like Crown was having, I hate to say this about Crown because I really like Crown historically, but he was having a really rough time in almost all of his matchups. And I think that's why they were looking for a fix in the mid lane. So in that regard, I think Pobelter performed better individually than Crown, and now it's just about, having him continue to play with the team, continue to build synergy, try to fix some of their early game issues, try to protect Wiggly a little bit more. Just keep thinking back to that C9 level 1. That was really, really unfortunate for him. I'll throw it back to you guys, though. Like, what do you think of Pobelter's performance this past week?
Yeah, so Pobelter had a KDA of 1.0 this weekend. His kill participation was 55%, and he had a plus 116 experience differential after 15 minutes. So not terrible, particularly the team that he's playing on. But I keep going back to overall, when we look at this change in a few weeks, will this be a net positive for CLG as opposed to Crown? There's an interesting comment here from the Twitch chat. Mikhail 212345 says, "Is Crown boom? 2017 good, 2018 bad, 2019 good, 2020 bad, 2021 good." I mean,
well,
what do you make of
by that metric? Crown should have been good this year. I mean, by that cadence.
What do you think, though? Do you think that this is going to be a net positive?
Yes,
we only had one
week,
but
right. Yeah, he only had 1 week, and look, I don't think CLG did Pobelter any favors by putting him on an Azir. I think Azir is a mechanically tougher champion when you have to pull off that Shurima shuffle and really make something happen. I think he would have been better or more comfortable on something that would have been a little bit easier or to play, maybe a Rise on his Realm Warp to help him make some plays, to do the things that he wanted to do, because CLG was more proactive in the games that Pobelter was there. And Pobelter did outfarm both games, all of his teammates. He had the best CS score on both of them. But it wasn't a good showing overall, and I don't think that is necessarily his fault specifically. A 198 score across both games. I don't think that CLG can really do anything at this point to salvage the season. I think because the spring split overall does not matter as much, they should really focus on finding their synergies, finding their identity, the way that they want to play, do some interesting draft choices, maybe work in a couple of different ways to help Wiggly out so he doesn't get so far behind. Mm-hmm. You know, like CLG on paper is not the strongest team, and adding Pobelter, some veteran leadership, does certainly help, and we saw that. So work on that.
Let me add on that. I mean, one thing I know about Pobelter, having worked with him when he was an analyst for us at ESPN Esports at the 2016 League of Legends World Championships. We were together in New York and in Los Angeles. He's very competitive, no matter what he's doing. We were playing chess, and he was an extremely competitive guy in that realm as well. Just no matter what it is. It could be a fun game, no matter what. Eugene wants to win, right? So one thing that I think he could bring to this team is he doesn't care if the team is in last place. He doesn't care if this team is struggling. He wants to bring that paradigm shift to a team like CLG and say, look, we are going to win, we're going to take it game by game, and every single game matters no matter where we are in the playoff race. I think that's very important to say.
I agree. I just don't think that one player can do that. I don't think that one player can turn a team
help
around.
change the culture of the team, I think.
The culture, yeah, but not the record.
Sure.
I don't
enough.
think.
Well, with that in mind, let's go to Twitch chat. Flashy is joining us. Thank you very much, Flashy. You're always in the Twitch chat. We appreciate that. He says, will CLG change the expectations we have of them? And let me expand on that and ask you, do you think this is the last that we will hear of changes in CLG? And do you think that this team might look quite different by the time summer rolls around?
I mean, I have two quick thoughts on that, but I think Emily's probably got some stuff too. Will we see some changes? I don't know. With the Rush being a content creator signed, why not put Rush in for Wiggly for 1 week? Can they do that? Maybe. I don't know. That'd be fun to see. What was the first part of the question from Flashy?
That was really, I expanded on it. Maybe we can go to Los Angeles and ask this question to Emily. Emily, what do you think about the fact that CLG may not be done and we could see some more roster changes?
So do I think that we could see more roster changes? Maybe. I kind of like, so you know the big let's give NA talent a chance push. I mean, this would be really, really raw, but in terms of where do CLG want to finish and like realistically, where can they finish? NA is kind of a, as I know Mark Z keeps bringing this up on broadcast, a soup of teams where CLG is at the very bottom. So, I mean, realistically, how much can they climb? Like they basically would have to win out, right, to make playoffs. That's kind of what would have to happen in order for them to get in a good playoff position. And I also think other people would have to lose at this point just because they're so far behind, despite the fact that it's only mid-season, because everyone else has kind of been taking games off of each other in that aforementioned soup. I would love to see some of their academy players get a chance. And as much as I like seeing Pobelter come back, because again, I've been really adamant about the fact that he should have a starting spot. Like there's no reason why he shouldn't be starting for a team based on past performance, based on what he can bring to a team. However, Tuesday has been with this org for forever. Like, why is he not getting a start? He's been with them since like 2016, I think, on their academy lineup. And then, you know, if you're looking at the jungle situation, they have Froggus. I know their academy team has not been doing super well. I know they also had some visa issues with a few of their players. But, like, maybe if your season is completely over, give your academy guys a chance. Like, give them stage experience. This is kind of supposed to be one of those things where maybe you do give your players a chance. And I think another thing to look at with CLG, and I don't know if CLG, like, I'm not making assumptions about how they're viewing their own season, right? But we're looking at the spring season a little bit differently now. We're looking at how many people think the upcoming midseason invitational is A, like its value as a tournament, and also B, the season's value as a season, because you don't, or the split's value is a split because you don't actually get championship points for this split, right? So like, since you're not gonna lose out on championship points, that's another mark for me to try to give some of these younger players a chance from the academy lineup.
And see,
so I'd like
and
to see that.
I agree with that, by the way, totally.
Yeah,
but why not? You know, we've seen young talent in like the LEC in Mad Lions come in and completely disrupt a game flow of top tier teams like G2. Not saying that CLG's academy team has that capability, but if they come in, they might shake something up. They're going to do some things that, you know, some of the veteran teams don't expect, and that could, you know, bode well for the CLG brand, that could bode well for CLG fans, and just might actually help them get that experience that they need.
And the fact that spring doesn't necessarily count towards Worlds is exactly why I personally am not freaking out about Team Liquid. Many people are. I am not. Brox is still new in the team. Brox is still adjusting. They've had only a couple of weeks together. Things certainly will look better. Not everyone in chat agrees. There is a comment from Shy Phoenix D-Lift that says, Brox's appearance can't change the fact that Team Liquid is way behind in terms of meta. But Emily, when you look at Team Liquid right now, and when you forecast them with Broxa getting more reps with this team, is it still too early to be concerned about Team Liquid?
I mean, in terms of concerned, I also think this is a season where I'm not saying TL should sub, because I think in their specific case, they really should look at what they want to do with Broxa and get him ingratiated with the team, because a lot of this stuff should have happened months ago, right? If he hadn't had visa issues. And initiating a new jungler takes a lot of time. I know before the season even started, people were saying that he was duoing with Jensen and they were getting along super, super well. And one of the things I said is that Jensen has never had, I've never felt Jensen had a jungler that he really loved, right? Like he's gotten along with his junglers, he's been fine, but he's never had that like lights out jungle mid synergy that I've seen from other mid laners. And I would love to see that for him, because he is such a strong like individual laner. And people were saying they were doing together and they were like, they're getting along great. This is going to be amazing. And then Broxa's not able to come to the country for months. So that is one thing that I would like to see them work on, is like Broxa and Jensen together as a jungle mid duo. How are they working it out? Can they regain that kind of like rumored synergy that they had at the beginning of the split before the season before the season started, when they were doing in solo queue together? That would be something I'd be looking at. I would also be looking at their read on the meta, and kind of like, I know people in previous times were picking on them for going with the Senna in the bot lane. I was as well, not necessarily as much as like, oh man, Doublelift can't play it, but speaking about how they could help out Surenfire by having pushing lanes. Picking that Senna wasn't necessarily helping because he was put in a really awkward position where he's having to fill in for Broxa, so their team synergy gets delayed. They keep playing these kind of meta comps, but with someone who's completely new to the LCS stage and doesn't have the same kind of international and LEC experience that Broxa does. So I mean, for TL, like in terms of am I worried about them, I honestly think if I were them, I'd just take a look at this split. I would just focus on like team fundamentals, trying to build up that team synergy, and honestly at this point not worrying about winning the split. And I know that's like rough to hear and probably a pretty controversial opinion, but if I'm Team Liquid, I'm still looking at Worlds. And again, one of the benefits of spring, I'm not saying everyone should be punting their spring season, because that's not the answer either, but in terms of where TL are now, I think what they should be doing is, what can we do to get our team good enough and have like stronger communication, stronger synergy, so that when we do actually get to summer, when those championship points matter, we can still represent North America as one of their top teams. Now, obviously, that's also still going to be a tough ask, because I don't see C9 like suddenly dropping off a cliff.
Sure.
So they're still going to have like really strong contention at the top. But if I'm TL, I'm looking at the pieces I still have. They still have a ton of mechanical talent. I think Broxa is still like an interesting piece to fit into their team. So I want to see how it works, and I want to see them kind of draft to their strengths, even if it means that they are drafting these very simple front-to-back kind of team fighting compositions and trying to work out their synergy that way.
There's a comment in the chat that said they were in a similar position in spring 2018, and they were, M. Bry responded with, they were looking much better in spring 2018. Now, in spring 2018, they had 7 losses. If they lose tonight on Monday Night League, they will tie that record. They would be at 3-7 in dire position, possibly missing the playoffs unless they go on a miraculous run in the second half of the season. A team that is doing very well in the first half of the season is FlyQuest. There's a lot of positives to talk about there. Of course, the social media campaign with the Go Green initiative, absolutely love it. Great cause. They've planted, I think it's like over 1,200 trees. They mentioned it in a tweet reply. It's definitely a very high number of trees that they've planted as a result of their gameplay. But when you look at FlyQuest right now, Darren, what are some of the positives that you're really seeing?
I love Ignar. I'm a support player myself. Consider myself a challenger level Leona player. Chat, you guys can blame me for that one. But I love watching Ignar. When he's allowed to be flashy and fun on playmaking supports, it just creates this really fun dynamic for FlyQuest to play around. There was a 9 minute, 30-second jungle fight against Golden Guardians where he flashes it, pops his ult, flashes over a wall, and then runs through as Rakan with his ult and charms 4 people, and then zips back and forth to get back to safety. It was really fun to watch, and I just think with his wins across Leona, Rakan, Thresh, Blitzcrank, and Alistar, those are the support champions I want to see him continue to play because they allow him to basically set up his team that wants to be aggressive and wants to fight like Viper and Wild Turtle to just, explode and do what they want to do best.
Emily, is FlyQuest's success sustainable in your opinion?
So this was my prediction, like when they asked us for second half of the split hot takes. It was actually, I was the one that said FlyQuest will finish 3rd or higher. I guess that's not as much of a hot take, but when I look at FlyQuest, I see a team that still makes, a ton of mistakes, especially given some of the veteran talent they have on their team. When I'm talking about Santorin, Wild Turtle, and PoE and Ignar as well, especially given their pre-existing synergy together a bit. However, I do also see a team that is really aggressive when they want to be. Like I said, like that CLG game, they go for the dive top, which I liked, but they botch it.
A 3-1 advantage, and they go 1-1.
And then they get caught out bot, and then PoE is already rotating down on the Corki. You just see a team that kind of wants to be one of those teams where Viper is TPing in, PoE is TPing in when he can, or he's just pushing out the wave and rotating. And I think that is a really cool look for this team, especially with Santorin, who again is a jungler that I personally value pretty highly. I think he has a really strong understanding of the game, and I like a lot of his early pathing. So I really like the way that this team wants to play. Like if you look at their games, you can really tell how they want to play. Like they would like to be more aggressive. They do want to be initiating those fights. And when they are initiating those fights, they want the entire team to be able to join in, either from having already pushed up their wave and then pre-rotating, or from TPing in. So I think if they can nail down like more of the fundamentals and the communication, because it's like the idea is there, but the execution and the timing is sometimes off for them. And I think given who is on this team and the way that they already kind of seem to be on the same page about how they want to play, that's why I predicted that they would finish 3rd or higher. So where do you guys think they'll finish by the end of the split?
I mean, I think they'll be in that top 3 position for sure, especially the way that they've been playing. But Emily, I wanted to kind of talk to you a little bit about their play style and their decision making. In the Golden Guardians match, there was a 5v fight that broke out in the mid lane around 27 minutes. So a late game team fight, at least opening to the late game. Viper was at 25 or 75% health. Power of Evil only had 30% of his mana, and they still jump in and fight, and they win the fight. Even though Haunter TP's in, I believe he TP'd in, but he came in full health as fully built Aatrox. And they still come out and win that fight. Now, that kind of team identity to me is really entertaining to watch, but is that the sort of stuff that those moves that they can make against teams like Cloud9 to try to take down some of those top tier teams?
I mean, probably not. I think it's more than looking at late game team fights for FlyQuest. If they're going to take down someone like C9, they have to attack them early, because C9 they're really smart about they've been really smart about their level 1s. They've been really good about being super aggressive early, and I think that's what FlyQuest want to do, but they definitely haven't done it yet. I know, talking to Wild Turtle, not this past week, but the week before, he was talking about how they just really, really wanted to be that aggressive early team, and they hadn't yet. Like, they kind of found themselves on the back foot a lot early due to mistakes they would make, again, like going for dives and kind of mis-executing them, or just being in having lanes pushed out against them, so they couldn't go for those aggressive moves that they would typically want to do. I think if they're going to attack a team like C9, they absolutely have to do it early instead of waiting for later game team fights to kind of try to come out on top.
I agree.
Well, FlyQuest went 2-0 this weekend. Another team that went 2-0 this weekend and kept their record absolutely perfect. was C10-0. And already the conversation is starting. Will they go and 18-0? Will it happen? Here's my question about Cloud9, and I think it's a very fair question. And I'll start with you on this one, Darren.
Okay.
Is Cloud9 dominating the LCS? And Tyler has said in previous segments that this is the most dominant a single team has been in a major region ever. Okay, the stats don't lie. But is this a product of C9 being so good, or is this a product of the rest of the LCS being so bad?
So my thought is that Cloud9 is overperforming in an underperforming league. I don't want to take anything away from the 5 players. Their synergies, they look great. They're mechanically sound. They're aggressive. They don't lose objectives. They haven't lost a mid lane tower all split so far. And they're just a suffocating team to play against. But you do need to look at the strength of the competition and say, oh, it makes sense why they're getting away with the things they're getting away with. And then the next question is, can they get away with those same things on the international stage, which is what it looks like to be MSIs? Well, we'll get our first taste of that. So I'll reiterate what I said. I believe Cloud9, without taking anything away from the 5 very skilled players, they are overperforming in an underperforming league.
I think that's a very good way to put it as we take a look at the player KDA in Week 5. By the way, Cloud9 occupy 5 of the top 6 KDA positions across the LCS. Only Bang is at an 8.9. So he fits in there. This is for Week 5, but I was talking about the entire season. And by the way, Support Vulcan is number 2.
Oh, yeah.
Number 2 in KDA.
He's number 2 in KDA, and he has the KDA record for support for the entire league through 10 games.
Let's go to Tyler Erzberger now in Los Angeles. Tyler,
Hey!
you have definitely been beating the C9 drum and talking about their dominance. So I actually want to ask you the same question because you have a good perspective on it. C9 is so amazing that they would have dominated anyway, or LCS is such a dumpster fire that C9 had to do well?
It's a silly question, right? And I state the facts. That's all I'm stating. I'm not stating anything other than the facts. That C9 is dominating the LCS like no team has ever before in any other region, major or minor. And this whole notion of NA sucks this year, NA is terrible this year, NA is so bad. When has NA not been bad? Really, no, I'm asking you, honestly, to all of you, because I've been at LCS for the last 5 years. And there's never been a season where the notion hasn't been NA sucks.
2014 LCS, it was pretty competitive. You had 4 or 5 teams that...
That was also 6 years ago.
Right. But
No,
I'm
but
just saying, when has North
24
America been competitive in their own region?
But dude, no one thought of NA as... It was a joke back then, too. When people said TSM and Cloud9 could actually stand up with Samsung White and Samsung Blue, they were laughed at. NA had a good reputation going into the 2012 World Championship when Dignitas, TSM, CLG Prime went there. TSM were one of the favorites to win the entire tournament. You know what happened at Worlds that year? They all failed. Dignitas lost to Saigon Jokers, CLG didn't make it out of groups, and TSM got embarrassed by Azubu Frost. And that was the end of anyone thinking anything of NA, and since then, it's been a laughingstock. So, don't look at it as NA being trash. I know NA is trash. The players will say it's trash. But people have been saying this for years. We should look at what C9's doing and ask, why has no team ever done this in the LCS, except C9 this year?
Tyler, Chad is talking about they're playing a little bit of fantasy league here, trying to put C9 in other leagues. Some are saying that C9's play style would actually do quite well in the LCK this season, where LEC, it's too early to tell. I know we asked this in the inaugural episode, but I want to ask it again. Like, if C9 were in another league, in the LCK, in the LEC, how do you think they'd do?
I think in the LEC they'd be top 3, top 4. I'm not ridiculous. I don't think C9 would go to LEC and crush. Europe is a far better region than North America. Anyone with eyes can see that. But in the LCK, they'd be top 3. I could see them being the best team in the LCK. The only things we know so far when it comes to international play is through rumors and scrim results. And I know scrim results aren't a big deal, but the only real things I've heard is that during the offseason, Evil Geniuses went to Korea and did really, really well against the best teams in the LCK who are doing well in the Kespa Cup.
Tyler, let me step in here just for a second. We have the power rankings up. T1 is occupying the top spot at number 1, followed by Gen.g, Fnatic, G2, and Cloud9 at number 5. What do you make of that list?
It's fair, and it's fair, right? Because we can't rank C9 unless they prove it on the international stage, and I have the belief as well. I believe they should be discussed in those contenders for world's best, but I will never give them a top 3, top 2, even, or the top 1 spot until they go to MSI and prove it. And I do think if there is an MSI, because we will get into that later of LCK, LPL, we don't even know where the location is. Riot, please announce where it's going to be. If there's going to be one, please, we are waiting. But if there is an MSI this year, I think Cloud9, if they can continue their pace and they can, win their first title since 2014, I think they go to MSI with something to prove. And I don't think C9 going to MSI would be going to go just for fun. They're going to go to make a final and win it. That's
Tyler,
why this is why
you know what? We will talk about this a little bit later in the LPL segment. We don't even know who's going to be represented at MSI at this point.
No, not at all. But I do have a question, Tyler, for you, and this is also, I think, for Emily, is right now G2 looks really shaky against both like Mad Lions and Schalke.
And Switch Chat is actually saying G2 should not be as high as they are on our power rankings list.
So my question to both of them is current Cloud9 versus current G2 and current Fnatic. Let's just keep it LEC, LCS. Sure. My opinion is Fnatic and C9 would be really entertaining, but C9 right now would crush G2.
That's interesting. That's
would crush G2 right now.
Emily, do you agree with that? Do you think that the current C9 would crush the current G2?
I don't know about crush, but I think C9 have the kind of team that can do well against G2. Because when we're thinking about historically, even going back as far as last year, right? Like, what did G2 struggle against? They struggled sometimes against like global comps, like triple globals, like triple TP, or multiple global ults. They had trouble with that, and they also had trouble with super early aggressive teams, and that's actually how Fnatic attacked them last year. It's how teams are attacking them this year. Like one of the rematches I really wanted to see was that Mad Lions rematch, because Mad Lions got the better of them in the early game in their first matchup, and then G2 kind of just took over the mid game. But I think I actually have to. I think this is the first time I've ever agreed with Darren on this show. I do think that C9 would have
first
a better
time ever,
shot.
and it'll never happen again.
I know.
We've agreed on some of our picks.
I do think that C9 would have a better matchup into G2 than they would into Fnatic. I would agree with that. Like based on playstyle alone, I would agree.
Yeah, I think that they would really, really beat them handily in that early game that we were talking about. But knowing that Cloud9 makes a lot of moves early game, they don't let their opponents get to the other side of the river much often, and G2 is shaky in that early game.
Well, look, this is all fantasy League of Legends that we're talking about here, C9 clearly in the LCS, but let's talk about LCS MVP, because really, at this point, when you're talking LCS MVP, you're talking members of C9. The numbers don't lie, their play doesn't lie. No mid lane turrets. That doesn't lie. I mean, there's so many positives for this team right now. Whatever you believe about the LCS, when we're looking at that league specifically, C9 have to be front runners. All of them, really. But each of our panelists have a different choice for who their early MVP of the split would be. Let's start with Emily. Emily, why do you think my Turkish brethren would be MVP of the split?
So when I look at Niski, historically we've seen him, like be a really dominant mid laner when he was on Splice. We've seen him kind of pull out a lot of weird picks. I always saw, like when I knew Blabber was coming on as the starting jungler, the thing I was worried about is whether Niski would be able to hold mid lane for a lot of these aggressive moves that Blabber likes to make early. And that's not a point against him, but when I think of his mid lane style, I think of someone who is more willing to pull out certain kind of like maybe slightly off meta picks. You'll see him play those and rotate to side lanes sometimes. I was curious to see like how that would work out. So we've seen him on his staples like Cassio and Zoe, but then we've also seen him on Panth, Rumble, Vigar, Morgana. He's played a ton. He's played almost as many champions as I think he played all of his previous split already, and it's only halfway through the split. So I think the coolest thing has been seeing Niski step up and kind of provide that cover so that, again, C9 is really good about having pushing lanes. Like, their lanes really push aggressively early. What I like about Niski is how he's affected the map, and also how he's not like covering for Blabber, but I like how they've worked together, if that makes sense. Because that was like my one like worry, is that with a mid laner like Niski, who sometimes likes to pull out some weird stuff, who might end up like losing lanes CS wise, might end up getting shoved in a bit if Blabber could deal with that. But they've worked super, super well together. And then my honorable mention is Licorice, just for always doing what the team needs him to do.
Tyler, let's go to
That's
you
it.
on this one now. You have selected Blabber as your early MVP. Why is that?
It's a little bit what Emily talked about. I mean, the synergy between him and Niski has been on point for 9 of the 10 games. The only little misstep was pure Blabber in their TSM game, where, you know, both of them died very early in that game and could have been a snowball for TSM, but still turned out to be a C9 blowout. Blabber to me has always been that prospect where since 3 years ago, I watched him on Team Ocean and Scouting Grounds. It was him, Vulcan, Palafox, you know, really, really good players, really young, and he was confident back then that he could be one of the best. And I think we're finally seeing him evolve into that final form of, we have a world-class jungler who is technically talented as I think any jungler in the world. His kick against CLG, where Licorice, you know, kind of ruined it with the set suplex, but that was one of the best plays I've ever seen in the LCS, and it was effortless for him. He's always been an amazing early game jungler. We saw that last year at Worlds, where he out-jungled both Yankos and Tarzan in the early game, but it was the later on in the game, when you actually had to make macro decisions and have control of the jungle, where he would falter. This year, C9 has had a lockdown on the jungle. 92% of Drakes have gone to C9. 86% of Heralds to C9. They know how the lanes from the like everything that Blabber is doing. I'm not going to give a total credit to Blabber, because to control the jungle, you need an entire team to be around that with wards and actually roaming and everything else. But Blabber has improved so much in such a short amount of time that I just can't wait to see him hopefully at Worlds this year. And this team altogether, all 5 deserve, you know, recognition, right? Licorice will do whatever the team wants. Niski has played many more champions than Blabber has. Blabber has pretty much been playing Lee Sin and Elise, but I really think Blabber is the most valuable player on this team when it comes to international success. If Blabber can continue moving forward, I think he can really lead C9 to the next level.
Tyler, before we move on to the LEC, point blank, I'm going to ask you, 18-0 Cloud9, can it happen?
Of course, it can happen. I think it will happen. I said a few weeks ago that it was about 30%, 40%, but at this point, I think that their goal is 18-0, and just from looking at the rest of the league and how bad they look, I think this is an 18-0 season for Cloud9.
There you have it.
I have to agree, just because of the way that the rest of the
Darren,
league
the
looks.
contrarian, is agreeing?
Well, no, I mean, it's easy to see that they can go 18-0. They're 10-0 right
enough.
now, 8 more wins. Who's going to stop them?
By the way,
would be TSM.
In one sentence, your MVP pick was my fellow Canadian on
Vulcan.
C9. Why is that?
Oh, yeah, Vulcan. 5-4, 93 leads in kills and assists.
Okay.
KDA of 24.5, which I mentioned before, was the highest amount in supports across the entire league ever.
Yep.
And he just, in one of the pregame interviews, he just said it didn't feel very fair that what Cloud9 was doing, because everyone's just so mechanically better on his team. And he has a really unique mentality of turning 50-50 fights into 80-20, and how do they do that, and how do they prepare for that. And they do that through smart drafting and great support play. So go Vulcan.
We appreciate the great support in the chat. We see all the comments. I'm monitoring them. Keep asking questions. I will definitely be asking Darren, Tyler, and Emily. Thank you for watching the Rift Rewind, an ESPN League of Legends program. You're watching us live on Twitch, the ESPN app, YouTube, and Twitter. Let's now move on to Europe. There is a traffic jam on the Autobahn. As you take a look at the results and standings in the LEC this past weekend, my goodness. I don't think many people would have predicted what is happening in the LEC right now, because G2 is far and away in everyone's predictions to lead the way once again this split, and that is definitely not the case. As we take a look at the results here, they did beat Excel, but what stands out to you, Darren, when you look at this?
You know, Schalke getting the second win, that would be a good one.
Good for them.
Yeah, good for them.
They've made changes and they've improved for all intents and purposes.
A little bit of momentum for them. Fnatic over Rogue is pretty expected. G2 over Excel, you expect that. Misfits versus Mad Lions, I wanted to be more competitive, but Misfits was on that hot streak where they ended up going 7-0 before getting a loss on the next day, which is ta-da! That one versus Rogue, and obviously Rogue had lost earlier or in the day prior. So that middle tier of, like, 2, 3, 4, 5 is just such a more interesting thing to watch than the LCS 2, 3, 4, 5.
What's very interesting to watch as we take a look at the standings right now, of course, G2, Fnatic, Origin, and Misfits all tied for first. Can I please give a shout out to the LEC social media teams?
Sure.
They are absolutely killing it this split. It's very entertaining to watch them interact with each other. They are hilarious. Whoever handles those social media accounts, they deserve raises.
I would say that the LEC production overall, the whole brand, is a very strong and entertaining thing to watch. And we were talking about it earlier. It makes it more fun, and when it's serious, it's serious. When they get into the broadcast, the games matter, everyone's taking it seriously, but they still have their fun. And then outside the broadcast, they understand this is people playing video games, and even though it's the highest level of competition, it's still that.
And they're very self-aware. That's what I love about it.
And I love that about it.
G2 is soliciting advice from people. My gosh, we haven't been mediocre in such a long time. How do we deal with this? Like, that's hilarious to me. Just the idea that a professional team would be so self-aware. It's great. I love it.
Yeah, and I look, it is, but memes don't win games. And at some point, I feel like after the loss to Mad Lions, G2 was on stage. Caps and I think Hillsang were sitting there, kind of not Hillsang. I'm sorry, Caps and Mickey X.
Okay.
Excuse me. We're sitting there talking, and they looked pretty serious. Like, they were talking like, hey, these are some of the things that they were giving each other serious feedback. Normally, this is the team that's smiling during drafts, and they laughing. It's like, oh, it's just a loss.
They're still very loose when you listen to their comms, though.
Right, but I think they needed a kick in the pants to start taking things a little bit more seriously, because I think that's kind of what happened last year. Was they took things not as seriously, ended up crushing LEC anyways, got to Worlds and didn't get as far as they wanted.
All the way back to our kickoff show, the team that we thought would give G2 a kick in the pants was Origin. We were all pointing at Origin, at least on paper, to be the team to give them the biggest threat in the spring split in the LEC. Tyler, you believe Origin still has what it takes to run away with it as they remain tied for first right now. Give us your scouting report on Origin for the rest of the split.
They're boring. I mean, when you say they're boring, that sounds like an insult, right? They're boring.
He's not wrong.
But
they're so darn steadfast.
But in a league where there's chaos happening everywhere, Mad Lions, G2, Misfits, you have all these high variance teams where you don't know if Misfits might just blow a tire and just follow the ball in the standings. G2 might go on a long slump. I believe that Origin, it's not going to be the most exciting finish this season, but they're going to finish top 3, maybe even second or first, and they do it the right way. They're very consistent in a very boring manner. They don't take fights if the fight looks like it's going to be anything below a winning percentile, and they are the best mid-game team in the league. Their early game, not stupendous, but they know how to get it done. They know who on the team are the carries with Upset and Alfari, and they know how to get those players into the right position to actually win games. So while I do believe G2, Fnatic, even a team like Mad Lions might have a higher ceiling than Origin, Origin is the most consistent team to me in the LEC, and that's why I can bet on them to make top 3. I know they'll be there at the end of the split. They'll be in the late stages of the playoffs. Right now, even G2, they could bomb out, and I don't think any of us would be super surprised if, Caps in the bottom lane didn't work out and they flamed out in the first round. I believe that Origin is the most consistent choice in the LEC. They're boring, but they make it work, and that's why they're a good team.
Nomax D in the chat says OG plays way too safe. Many people would say safe equals boring, at least in terms of a viewing experience. Adele Chaudhria is in our chat, who has joined us previously on this show. What's happening, Adele? What is going on? He says Origin has taken over the late game meme that Splice had last year. Nice.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I want to kind of piggyback off of something about what Tyler said, how they're a little bit boring, they're a little bit safe.
Yeah.
They're very steadfast in the way that they want to play. They know what they want to do. They'll draft around that, and then they'll try to go execute that. And that actually...
Let's watch out the table.
Yeah, the table. That actually got them in trouble against Fnatic in that match, where they specifically said, we want to play Soraka, we're going to ban the Braum so we can get away with the Misfortune pick, we're going to play Nautilus, and that's how we're going to play, and that's how we're going to win. And Fnatic just drafted around that, and they knew exactly what they were trying to do, and they just exploited it. So if they're not able to be flexible and find a way to get out of this steady marching order, both in draft and in game, I don't think that they're going to be the top of LEC. They might be third or fourth.
Could be Fnatic that's the top of the LEC. Emily, what's your scouting report on Fnatic?
So I really like, I've been enjoying watching Fnatic a lot, actually. I really like Selfmade on this team, and I also really like how they've been using Nemesis. I know there have been a lot of like jokes and memes about how he's now like an Ornn main in the mid lane, but if you look at where they really had success with Nemesis last year, it was when he was on the TF, right? And that was like by far, you know, that was a champion you must ban against Nemesis because he was that good and the team just looked that good with him on the TF. I think one of the things the TF does is, you know, affect side lanes really well. And that is what he has also been able to do with the Ornn. And the reason why I'm specifically bringing this up for Fnatic is because last year it really seemed like Broxah was always torn between, oh my gosh, I need to go top because Bwipo wants to be the carry. Oh my gosh, I need to go bot because Reckless wants to be the carry. And the setup they have now is that Nemesis is taking a little bit fewer resources and he's picking stuff like the Ornn mid, which ties into what the meta is right now, but it also allows them to focus on both Bwipo and Reckless, and I don't feel that same tension in Selfmade. Like, he just kind of goes where it's optimal for him to go. I really love him on this team. I've loved some of the picks they've brought out for Bwipo, the Zac top. I really liked that. So I think this is a team that, whether it's through the addition of Selfmade, whether it's just the fact that they've really found their stride in this meta, I really liked their recent drafts and I really liked how they played them out. Despite, I know everyone was kind of like, Zac top, what is this? But I mean, I really liked it. And I think awesome. This is a team that, you know, after being torn between like these two carry side lanes, has now found a much better balance for this split. And I don't know why that is, but whatever they've found, like, keep doing it because it's working.
T-Nod in chat says Bwipo is a stud. I agree. I actually love watching Bwipo play. He's quickly becoming one of my favorite players to watch because he's really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, his explosion onto the 2018 World Stage was great, and I think that his rise and steadfastness is really great to watch. His Pantheon pick was really great against the Alphari's Soraka. The Zac top lane, I'll echo what Emily said, was like a lot of fun. Like you just get to see, I think, a little bit more fun Fnatic when they do those kinds of drafts, which is what they want to. They want to play a little bit fast and aggressive, and they're going to make a couple of mistakes here and there. But I totally agree with Emily that the way that they're drafting and playing just allows them to have that identity of where they want to put their resources into.
Emily, what is your Fnatic prediction?
This is a hot take at this point either. I feel like all of my takes are very lukewarm, but my prediction is that Fnatic is going to... I know, like, my prediction, my incredibly bold prediction, because, you know, they're tied for first right now, is that Fnatic is going to finish definitively in the top spot for the regular season. Not playoffs, but for the regular season, I think Fnatic is going to take it. Like, I think they found their stride and they're just going to springboard off of this.
I wonder how much experience, especially in the last couple years, will factor in for G2. I think it's safe to say at this point, yeah, people are they're not performing to what we thought they might perform, or at least previously what we saw from them. But chances are they're going to still make the playoffs. And guess what? They have the most experience in those games, in those high-pressure situations of every team in the LEC. So I just wonder, Yeah, maybe we're seeing them they've lost 3 of their last 4 games, whatever the case may be. When we get to those elimination games, when we get to the moments, the business end of things, I just feel like G2 is just going to rise to the occasion like they do because they know how to win.
In the LEC, yes, they do. And I think, they do have some of that international experience that dwarfs a lot of other teams. But I really want to see them get back on track. They just have not instilled confidence in me in the last 2 weeks. Like 1 bad week, okay. 2 bad weeks, now you're starting to pump the brakes a little bit there.
Chat says what Caps brings to the G2 is pop-off moments. This is KOR3, pardon me, in mid lane with other champs, but sticking him bot lane doesn't give the Caps flair we've seen before. And yes, Craps has crept in at times this season, but remember, this is a fresh role swap, again, role swap 2.0, so you got to give some time to breathe here as we take a look at the G2 KDA in week 5.
I don't know. I mean, I bet you Tyler probably had some things on this, but I don't think that Caps has been awful. He had that one really, really bad game. But look at it. I mean, 5-1-10 in his win, 3-3-1 in his loss. Like, he's definitely not the only issue if you want to point to issues that G2 have. Their early game team composition and their team movement is really what they need to shore up. And they even had
but they're
some
an
good
excellent mid-game team.
They are if they can get there. And they're mechanically gifted enough to survive mistakes made in their early game. What's funny is in their loss against Mad Lions, they made the first moves against Mad Lions, got first blood, first tower, first Rift Herald, were ahead by 2,000 or 3,000 gold, and still ended up losing. So it was one of their stronger early game showings, and they still ended up losing. So that signals to me, okay, well, what's actually the real problem here?
If I were to venture a guess, and I have not been privy to these conversations, let me just lead with that, I don't think G2 is sweating. I don't think that they are overly concerned. I think that they do see some areas to improve, but they also realize that this is spring and they made a monumental role swap that they did last season in the opposite direction, and that's going to take time to shore up. It's going to take time for that chemistry to come back, and that's why I really don't think that G2 and their fans are sweating it right now, especially because they're still at the top of the table. They are tied for first. And when we get to the business end, when we get to when the games really truly matter in this split, I really feel like G2 is going to rise to the occasion like we have seen them do for the last several splits. But one team that did defeat them, in fact, the first team that defeated them in spring 2020 was Misfits. Misfits looking very good, also in that log jam at the top of the standings. Tyler, what can you tell us about Misfits in your opinions?
Well, I first have to say I apologize to Misfits because before the season started, I had a tweet that said I described every LEC team by one word. And for Misfits, I said who. And who are they? They are atop of the table right now. And I look like the idiot. I am the fool. I am sorry, Misfits. You are actually a very, very good team. My biggest surprise with Misfits is that it's the rebirth of Fevin. Obviously, Razork has been absolutely incredible in the jungle role. #1 in European solo queue right now. An incredible player. But my biggest surprise is Fevin. Because Fevin, a few years ago, was Caps, right? He was that fanatic ace mid laner. He was the up-and-coming mid. He solo killed Faker at MSI. And then he went to NA. And yeah, as many players do when they come to NA, he did not do very well. And he did not seem happy. He did not seem like he enjoyed the environment. Nothing against Clutch Gaming. He just seemed like he didn't like or really resonate with the North American culture and the practice schedule and the energy in NA. Then he went back to EU. He went to Misfits, got the super team, right? The Misfits super team that's going to take over Europe. And it failed miserably. And everyone's like, Fevin's career's over. It's over. He's done. He's washed. And then he gets put on this team with a lot of random rookies who I said, who are these guys? This is over. They're cutting ties. They're a budget string team. They're never going to do anything. And I'm wrong. Fevin looks revived. He looks like the Fevin old. And he looks like a player that we want him to be 3-4 years ago. He's back to the Fevin of old, and he's finally got that NA weight off his back.
Fevin has a 5.2 KDA so far this split, but one thing that really stuck with me when we actually spoke with Fevin last week on this very program was after the victory against G2. He was among the leaders afterwards, talking backstage with the rest of his team, saying, hey, calm down, let's enjoy the moment for a second, but calm down because we have another game this weekend. And also, yes, it is a big deal to take away G2's undefeated streak, but we can't let this get to our heads. We have to calm down.
One game at a time.
Exactly, taking it one game at a time. So that was very impressive for me that Febiven was also taking that sort of leadership role. Emily, when you look at Febiven, do you think MVP early on here?
Yeah, so both Tyler and I picked Febby as our LEC mid-split MVP, I believe, for all of the reasons that have already been brought up. But one thing I think that's been really cool to watch about him is that, when he was in NA, I would interview him pretty often just to talk about the game because he's really smart about the game, and I just liked talking to him about it, and I felt like I learned a lot just through talking to him. And I think last year he was also on Misfits, and that team, for whatever reason, they've all come out and said we just didn't have the right team culture. We didn't really end up getting along. Once we started losing, we couldn't really recover. We couldn't really agree on a way to play the game, how we wanted to play as a team. And so I was pretty concerned about him on this team with a whole bunch of rookies coming in, and Bavoy, who I'd seen primarily in the LPL, and he wasn't super impressive. So I think his leadership has been really crucial to this team, and it's allowed us to see the Febiven of old, but now on a team where he is leading a bunch of young talents, and I think that's a really cool evolution for him and his career. So to piggyback on everything everyone else has said, but also bring that in where he was on the same org last year, surrounded by veterans, that didn't work out, but now you suddenly put him on a team where he's leading all of these young talents like Razork. Bavoy, he's blossomed somehow. Dan's been performing well. It's been really nice to see this team come up, even though their first week they made a ton of mistakes. Razork into this face-off, I think, in one or both of their games. And they've just had this really solid, steady improvement where their games look less shaky week to week to week. And that's been really great to see. Who did you guys have for your LEC mid-split MVPs?
I will tell you that chat is really standing Razork right now. In fact, and I apologize, this is a whole lot of...
He's really good.
Yeah, we have Razork is hard smurfing right now. PX11Y, Razork has been the best player. And then this, I'm sorry about the username, it's just a bunch of letters and numbers that don't mean anything. Or maybe it means something to them and I apologize, I just can't read it. Razork seems like the best jungle in LEC at the moment.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, Emily's our jungle expert, but I totally agree with the unique take that when you put Febiven with a team of veterans, he didn't really have that leadership voice, and now he's on a young team where he gets to really shine as both a star mid laner and that leadership mentality, that leadership role.
Well, a team that has taken points off of Misfits this split is Rogue. And Rogue is, in terms of the standings anyway, they are in the best of the rest category right now as they essentially sit in the, I guess, the second position, but I guess fifth when you take into account all the teams that are tied for first. But Tyler, when you look at Rogue, how much of an opportunity do they have to surpass the teams that are in the first positions right now?
I'm still on the Rogue train. I have not given up on Rogue. When it comes to the early game, they're actually statistically the best team in the LEC. They get advantages. They're good in lane. This is a talented young roster, but like all talented young rosters in any esport, in any traditional sport, they can blow those leads and they can look sloppy at times, and they have, and they've lost games they shouldn't have this split. But I still believe in Rogue. When you have so much talent on that roster that has already proven themselves in a playoff format before last split, upsetting Splice, I think it's just time. It's going to take a little bit more time, and Rogue will finally, get the pieces together to actually take that early game and translate it into actual victories instead of throwing leads that they should, lock down. I'm not done with Rogue. Rogue will be a top 3 team by the end of the split. I believe in them still.
So those are thoughts from Tyler and Emily as we tie a bow on the LEC. I will say my favorite comms, I love Mic Check. I watch it every week. I think it's one of my favorite pieces of content that any region puts out. It's hilarious. And my favorite team to listen in on the comms is Mad Lions. They're absolutely hilarious. Carzy in particular. But
I
Mad
love
Lions.
Carzy and Shadow. I think they're mechanically skilled, and you showed that with Carzy on Callista. Shadow's Lee Sin has been super dominant. I'm gonna go a little bit off script, and whoever speaks up first from Tyler and Emily can weigh in, because I want to have a quick 2-second conversation about Shadow or Carzy. But like Humanoid being the weakest link on that team is what Miles Liam actually wrote is like the best thing for that team, because this young, talented roster has such a high ceiling. So I don't know who else has like a strong opinion on Mad Lions, but they get me excited. So I don't know who's going to jump
love
in.
Mad Lions.
Emily's in on me.
No, I was gonna say after week 1, I was like, I love Mad Lions. This team is so fun. Even though they got that really strong early game against G2, and then they unfortunately lost it. But if you're like asking who's better between Shadow and Carzy, I'm not sure if I can choose. I mean, Carzy is just like so insanely mechanically talented, and he's really smart about how he team fights. Like really smart. If you actually look at how he goes through fights, he's really intelligent with the way that he maneuvers through them, the way he waits for CC, the way he uses cooldowns, all that kind of stuff that you might not necessarily see on first glance, but when you break down a fight, you can see it from him. And then I actually really I know a lot of people are like way up or way down on Shadow, which happens a lot with junglers, but I think he is also really intelligent, and you can see it in a lot of his pathing.
The last thing I'll kind of weigh in real there before, because I know we got more stuff to talk about.
Yeah, we got to move on.
The last thing I'll say is I was really impressed with the fortitude they played against G2. We had mentioned it earlier where they lost first Tower, first Blood, and first Rift Herald. Were behind and had a smart team composition and fought around it with Kai'Sa on the Taric and Carzy on the Callista. And it was just a really smart play for them. And they're fun to watch.
KOR3 in the chat says, according to EU coaches, Shadow actually got LPL offers, and that's a great segue into our LPL segment. By the way, you are watching the Rift Rewind, an ESPN League of Legends program. We are live every Monday night, starting at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Twitch, the ESPN app, on Twitter, and also on YouTube. Emily, let's go to you with an LPL update. Of course, the coronavirus shutting down much activity in China, including the LPL. But what can you tell us about the LPL and some possible online activity?
Yeah, so from a broader perspective, something actually came out today where the National General Administration of the Sports Department has requested that all like sports events, which the LPL falls under obviously, but like this is broad for any sporting event in China, all activities, anything planned before April 30th is halted now. So as for what that means for the LPL going forward, we will keep you posted because I've reached out to them and we'll try to get you news as soon as possible. However, the online Scrim League starts, and I'm so excited, particularly because Chinese teams already play really fast and loose on stage compared to other regions. And on top of that, historically, and they've gotten better in recent years, but historically they've trolled each other in scrims pretty consistently. So I am very curious to see how this works out. The first match is between E-Star, who people might not remember, but they're like at the top of the standings right now. Which is a brand new team with a whole bunch of rookies that hadn't even announced their roster until like days before the LPL started. And then JD Gaming, who I actually think, had the season continued, they're one of the strongest teams in the LPL. So that's the first matchup. The 5 teams that are going to be competing, as you see up there: E-Star, JD Gaming, Suning, Top Esports, and Victory 5. So we have a good mix of teams from all over the standings. I don't know what this means going forward, but I'm just really excited to see teams start playing again. As for how much you can take from this, I think you should consider the fact that, again, traditionally, Chinese teams already play pretty fast and loose on stage. They have been known for trolling each other in scrims. I would not take these as necessarily gospel, but I really want to see teams, I think the teams themselves as well, like everyone wants to see the LPL back in action, and with the travel bans in China, like coming from a Western perspective, we always think, oh, we can't fly to China, or like people from China can't fly out. But what people might not know is that like the majority of the virus is actually concentrated in Wuhan, which is actually where E-Star is, so that is unfortunate. But it's a lot of the travel bans like within China, and now this coming out from the National Sports Administration, where they can't have public sports gatherings. So it's about the inability to travel within the country of China, and this is a really good solution until they're able to do something else.
Let me throw out a prediction there, and I'm sure many people watching this right now might be thinking the same thing. Exactly like you said, Emily, no sports gatherings in China until April 30th. The online Scrim League is starting. Emily, could this be a bridge or a test for the LPL possibly playing online games that count?
I mean, I don't want to say one way or the other, but if I'm the LPL, I'm definitely looking at that as potentially my only solution, because April 30th is really late. So if you're assuming that you can even send a team to MSI, like if you can get a team physically out of China, then, you know, or like, it's just, I don't even know how they choose a team without having the LPL in session. So although I know they're really like talking to the LPL representatives, they've actually been super nice and as communicative as they possibly can be. They're like, we really don't want to call this the LPL because we don't want this to be a stand-in for the LPL, right? Like, we don't want this to be confused with this is our top competition. But at the same time, if I'm them, I'm looking at, well, I can't have the LPL until April 30th anyway. We might as well get everyone started up on online scrim so at least teams can be practicing, playing each other and trying to improve if we're going to try to send a team to MSI, which again is up in the air because of those travel bans.
Emily, what does this mean for MSI? People in chat are wondering whether MSI is going to be canceled. We don't know where MSI is going to be. Could it be in China? Will Worlds even be in China at this point? But let's focus on MSI right now. What do you think MSI will look like if it in fact happens, and do you think it will happen?
Oof. I mean, that's a really rough question. I honestly don't see how a Chinese team can compete without it being held in China, but then I don't see how other teams could compete if that was the case. So there's this massive issue of travel, right? Because in order to keep people safe, in order to keep the virus as contained as possible, and one of the easiest ways to do it is to uphold those travel bans. So I think it's going to be really difficult to, like, putting the competition aspect of it aside, it's going to be really difficult to physically extract a team out of China and fly them somewhere, have them basically be quarantined for a certain amount of days before they can even, you know, go out and leave and do something. So that is going to be really difficult. I have no idea what MSI is going to look like because already we're seeing, you know, certain travel bans and quarantines in a whole bunch of other countries. So I have no idea. But I do know that the travel is going to be the issue.
I'm going to make a prediction in terms of MSI, and I don't have any information. As unfortunate as the circumstance is with the coronavirus affecting China, the show must go on. And so that's why I do believe that MSI will go on, and it will happen wherever it might be. And I do believe that we will see a team possibly subbed in place of a Chinese LPL team if they are unable to come here safely. And that's the primary concern, of course. So will it be another team from another region? We don't know that. But I do believe that we will see some sort of tournament that involves multiple regions that MSI traditionally has been. I think that's going to happen. One of the regions involved in that, of course, is the LCK, and a team that's looking really, really good, other than T1 that's topping our power rankings, is Gen.g. Tyler, when you look at Gen.g right now in the LCK, riding high, they were one of the teams that we gave an A+ to for the off season. What are you noticing the most about Gen.g right now?
3 letters, BDD. In our kickoff show, Darren said BDD's never been a superstar, and I said he was wrong.
I said in the last year he wasn't.
He was still good on KT. He was still good.
Hey, Darren, if you're going to be the contrarian, you got to take the heat, man.
Still good. He was still good on KT. But no, he is revived. And I will agree with Darren. KT was a woeful position. I know KT is close to Emily's heart, but that organization, not in the greatest spot. Looking a little bit better nowadays, but BDD is back into the form where a few years ago, he was on the cusp of being the best player in the world. You could have actually said he was. He was a back-to-back MVP of the LCK. And now finally, he is back. He's playing Zoe. the best Zoe in the world. Sorry, Niski. Sorry, everyone else with a Zoe. He is the best Zoe in the world. The Galio, the Zoe, the bread and butter that made him so good on Longju and Dragon X. The BDD that KT wanted as their savior is back. And now the player that looked up to Faker growing into his position when he was on CJ. Now he's with Clid. And Clid, who was a Faker last year, now has maybe even a better player currently than the Demon King himself. I'm always been a big fan of BDD, and I think he's showing why right now. He's one of the best mids in the world, and he's always been one of the best mids in the world since his days on Longju.
Tyler, obviously coronavirus concerns coming to Korea, South Korea as well. LCK effective, of course, playing empty arena games. We know Mina Kim, the host of the LCK, came back with a negative diagnosis for coronavirus, but there was a concern there. Do you think that we might see a stoppage in the LCK? Will it get so severe that perhaps the LCK might halt operations for a while as well?
I don't want to make any predictions, obviously, because we're not experts here. None of us are experts. But I mean, we know what's going on, right? Like Ashley Kong, our correspondent who we work with all the time, friends of mine, Lasso from Inven, like they had to be quarantined because they were scared that the coronavirus could have been affected of one of the hosts. I mean, it's a situation where you're always going to take safety over fun, right? It'd be great if there were fans. I mean, it'd be great if we could get the season done. We could go to MSI and Gen.g or T1 or Dragon X could play on the big stage, wherever it may be. Riot, please announce that soon. But we're always going to care more about the people than the game. At the end of the day, as much as we love to discuss troll, meme, whatever, it's just a game. When livelihoods are at stake, it's more important to care more about those people than the game itself. So right now, I mean, Overwatch League, a peer to League of Legends, they just canceled their Seoul homestands that they were supposed to go, and the makeup games that were supposed to be made up from the Chinese homestands being canceled. So I want LCK to send a team to MSI because I want to see Cloud9. I want to see the G2 Fnatic. I want to see Gen.g versus C9. I want to see these dream matchups. But if there's any chance that anyone can actually be seriously affected and, not even die, just be bedridden or sick, it's not worth it. It's not worth it at all. Yeah. I just want everyone out there to be safe.
Absolutely. That safety is the #1 concern, of course. So we will definitely be monitoring this situation, particularly on this program as it pertains to the future competitive games with League of Legends, the LCK, the LPL, etc., and what that might do for Worlds as well, because we certainly don't know what will happen as we go into the future. But right now, we will talk about the immediate future. Monday Night League, 2 games on the docket. Here to break things down for us is the Monday Night League desk. We got Prawley, Mark C, and my good friend Tigris. Take it away.
It ain't about the future, Arda. It's about right now. Well, more like 15 minutes from now. But yes, everyone, Monday Night League is coming up once again. We've got Prawley, we've got Mark Z, we've got 2 matches to talk about. So first up, it's going to be Team Liquid and Dignitas. Different vibes on this team from the first time that we saw them match off?
Yeah, I think the first time they actually were able to perform, Team Liquid was kind of winning the game, and it was a pretty close match, and Dig was actually able to stop them during their last push and kind of win the game. So that was pretty close, but so far in the last couple of weeks since Broxah came back to Team Liquid, I've been pretty disappointed in their performance, and Dignitas, on the other hand, has been performing a lot better.
Yeah, I think everyone after that loss to Dignitas was like, oh, well, Team Liquid's, waiting for their jungler, and Dignitas is a decent team. That didn't turn around when Broxah showed up. They're not really winning. Their only victory over CLG, and it's beginning to get a little too late into the season to still be struggling. We're past the halfway point. They're getting close to in deep, deep trouble.
Well, let's speak a bit more about some of those specifics of the trouble, because we're talking about the jungling experience, but if you look at the last game, it didn't come down to the Elise play where a lot of the issues were, it seems like overall team-wise. Yeah,
it's a really weird situation where Team Liquid right now, they need to make playoffs, and they need a lot of wins right now to make playoffs, because playoffs is going to give you all this time to prep. It gives you like best of 5 experience. There's too many valuable things to making playoffs in spring. And them having a whole week with Broxah to develop at least one winning strategy, we didn't really see that. Yeah, it just looked like a whole bunch of champions thrown together and they played, but it wasn't like, they practiced how to play, just jungle mid, something like that. I just want one strategy to come out so I can at least see like, all right, they're going to pick up wins right now so we can see more of them later in the season.
Yeah, the Elise pick felt like comfort for Broxa because he likes early game, but then they drafted, like you're saying, this Victor, Ashe, all these scaling picks around it.
Catch up with Elise's early game, so we got some insurance.
Yeah, it was really weird, and then the Elise had nothing to do. So Broxa didn't like turbo int or anything, but he also didn't gank anywhere. He didn't turn a kill. He controlled Scuttle Crabs and they got one early Drake, and that was all they got out of the Elise pick. And then the game went super late, and yeah, they get outscaled. So they didn't develop a strategy like you're saying. They're not playing well individually in game where someone got a solo kill but they lost anyways or anything like that, and they're not proactive. So there's a number of things they need to fix both in game and draft level and communication level.
And with their opponents, Dignitas, start off really, really hot, right, with those wins. Then that questioning came in, the soup that you may or may not like. But now they seem to be back on the upswing. So what is it that they're doing well, especially tapping back into that aggression they know and love?
I mean, so initially, yeah, they came out the gate strong. They're like kind of winning lanes, they're kind of stomping kids, and the games were very fast, but they weren't very like predictable. You didn't know how they were going to win each game. This last performance that they had on Saturday, they actually had really good teamwork with their support and jungle, their top and jungle, and Greg was actually able to perform really well, which is one of the biggest questions on Dignitas.
It sounded like they even admitted themselves they might have got a little overconfident after 3-0, and that's early in the season, especially spring. A lot of teams are trying to figure out how they're going to work, and I think teams kind of caught up to them, whereas before they were winning a lot on individual playmaking and skill. Now it's a lot more about how you're working with your team. It took some time for them to get back there, but then that Jarvan game was a good example of everyone working together to find and invade Smithy and then actually going and punishing him once they found him.
With all the questions that have surrounded Greg in the past, do you think that this optimal performance he just had is enough to start shifting it in this other direction of maybe Dig coming into this top form of themselves?
I've talked to Mark a lot about this.
I was going to say, we've had some conversations off air.
Especially in best of ones, I'm very hesitant to like give all the credit. Like, wow, all right, that game.
Greg's turned the corner.
Yeah, they did great that one game. But again, it's one game, and they need to play 9 more, and they need to be able to play in best of 5. So I'm not completely sold. I like the effort, and I like the progress. They've shown improvement. But they need to do it at least another week or two before I'm like, all right, this is actually a corner they turned.
And that was one game. Well, we got 2 games on Monday Night League, the other one being TSM and EG. TSM, I know that, Mark, you've made some remarks on the desk about that you feel, even though their scoreline may not say it, they are still in contention for a second in the league team. Yeah,
and I think FlyQuest has done a lot recently to kind of put themselves above TSM, but it is still that kind of conversation between Immortals, Dig, TSM, FlyQuest, all kind of fighting for it. And what I liked when I heard the interview with Kabe after their game was even though they won, they're not satisfied with some of the mistakes that they made in that game. And that's what you want to hear out of a team striving for second place is they're not happy to pick up wins. They're not happy to be in the playoff hunt. They really want to become the best team in North America. And that's reflected in their players' attitude, even in wins.
Yeah, I do like the idea, especially because I think when you win, it's very easy to become complacent. So the players having that mindset of like, it's not enough because it's not the way they wanted it is really, really important. But I think TSM, especially, them having a really good environment for Dardoch, who's been performing really well recently, for him to perform the way he has, I think is like really unique because last year on Academy, he wasn't doing too hot, joined TSM, another like really like kind of questionable player. Everyone was kind of keeping its eye on when is he gonna explode. But now he's doing well. They even had a tumultuous beginning of the split and he didn't explode. So the way he is now is really nice to see.
And before we end up tossing it back, quick thoughts on their opponents in EG.
EG had a different look to beat Team Liquid recently. They picked a lot more stable early game, whereas before I thought they were like, hey, go all in and just fight early game and hope you snowball. It's good to see that they can still function as a team in team fighting situations. But like probably said, I'm not sold off just one game. And that was against a very weak looking Team Liquid. Because remember, as much as we want to believe, oh, they beat the powerhouse Team Liquid, that's 9th place Team Liquid. So I want to see them pick up another win. If they can do it against TSM, I will start being very sold on their improvements.
All right, well, those are our 2 matches that we have coming up on Monday Night League. I also want to say, Arda, I hope your newfound fatherhood is finding you well. So back to you and the rest of the folks in the ESPN studio.
A new father. is very tiring, as you would expect.
So fatherhood
But
did find you.
no sleep for the wicked, because we have Monday Night League matchups to talk about. Actually, I found this quote from Jat. He has a podcast, JLXP. This was a very interesting quote he said. He said, "Every team looks great against Team Liquid this season." Does that continue here against Dignitas?
No. I think that Team Liquid is going to beat Dignitas. The individual skill that Team Liquid has on this roster cannot be worse as a sum. Like, when they come together, they need to form Voltron, the Megazord. They need to come and, like, right now it's like they're trying to form Voltron, but, like, the leg is going on the arms and stuff. It's time for Broxa to click. It's time for him to step up. He's been here for a while. This is game 4. Like, let's let him loose. You have the edge in the jungle with Broxa going up against Grig. I don't think Grig and Dignitas are going to try to do an early invade like they did against Smithy and try to catch Immortals off guard. That's not going to happen twice in a row in 1 week. Broxa on paper is a much stronger player. Heck, Jensen's stronger than Froggen. The bot lane of Core JJ and Double Lift are stronger than Johnson and Afromu. This team on paper should finally get something going against Dignitas. I don't think you're going to see the Dignitas of 3-0. I think you're probably going to see some Dignitas that are still working things out. But let's see some TL action.
I'm going to go to Tyler on this one. M. Breyer in the chat says, "Darren wrong again."
Woo!
While Natsumori TV says, "No faith in Huni." Tyler, who are you picking in this one?
I'm actually going to Dignitas. I kind of have to, right? I had that silly bet about Johnson, and I have to dye my hair if he's not top 3.
You know you're
MVP.
dyeing your hair, right? Like, you know this is a foregone conclusion, right?
Hey, his stats are really good. Like, he can make a deep run.
He's not Cloud9 MVP
We've
material.
already booked Avali for the year or the split end show to dye your hair, so we can look forward to that. Continue.
No, beyond just Johnson, though, I don't think Team Liquid's problem is Broxa really, or it's the talent, right? Like, it all comes down to the mid game. Their mid game is woeful. It's the worst in the league. They don't have any chemistry. It looks like these players have never played together before. And that's before Broxa, that's with Surenfire, and it's not just the jungglers, it's the players themselves, it's the bottom lane, it's the Impact doesn't look like himself. I think Huni right now is a better player than Impact. He's not in form. And I know we can look at the talent of TL and say, they'll get it together. You know, Mark Z and Kobe putting their stocks in TL saying, they'll get it together. You know, they'll get it together. It's the 4th game of Broxa. Darren, they'll get it together. Too talented to lose. I think we've gone past the point of giving them too much credit. This team right now is dysfunctional. I'm not saying outside of the game, but inside the game, they have no chemistry at all. Their mid game is woeful. It's bad. And I'm not saying Dignitas' mid game is brilliant by any stretch of the imagination, but when it comes down to a late game team fight, which is probably what's going to decide this game, right now I kind of go with Dignitas.
I wonder how much they're missing Smithy. That's all I think.
Nah, let's ask that question in the summer. It's way too early to ask that question right now. Come on. But we got another game, Monday Night League, to talk about. Speaking of dysfunction, it looked like TSM was a little dysfunctional last week when they went 0-2, going into that weekend with a 4-game win streak. But they are in the win column again this weekend. They are facing Evil Geniuses, who is killing the social game right now, but maybe not so much in this, at least for this week. They definitely look hit and miss to me. Sometimes they look really good. Other times they look like they don't belong in a game. It's very tough to pinpoint which EG we're going to get.
Yeah, and to be honest, it's a little bit the same thing with TSM, where they're a little high, a little bit low, the 4-game win streak, then a couple of losses. My pick for this one is Evil Geniuses, by the way. I really think that the aggressive style of Jizuke, they're starting unlocking him. He's starting to look better. I know Bang wants to play the scaling game, but if they can get on the same page and find a rhythm, then I think EG, specifically around neutral objectives, by the way, which TSM, I think, over the last few weeks has looked shaky around. EG looked really strong around their neutral objectives against Team Liquid, and it actually won them a game in an extended long fight. Extended and long are the same kind of word. Good job. Around the Elder Drake, they played a really nice extended fight that won them the game. So if they keep playing around these neutral objectives, which I think TSM is one of their weaker points right now, I think EG can roll that into their favor and create some advantages and get the W.
Want to bring Emily in here in Los Angeles. Emily, give us your predictions for both Monday Night League matchups.
So for the first one, I picked Dig because I've completely
Always
lost
against
faith in
me.
Team Liquid right now.
Always against me.
But I'll talk about TSM a bit just because I picked them. So I picked both of the teams that Darren did not pick. When they were talking on the Riot desk, they mentioned about how Dardoch looked shaky in the beginning, but has come to form with the team. I actually disagree. I don't think he looked shaky in the beginning. I thought TSM's early game was really good, and it was the rest of the game that they had issues with, where they seemed kind of torn between having this really strong, aggressive early game and early game jungler in Dardoch, and then kind of the way that they've always played, that we always know TSM is going to play. We joke about the second blue buff, all that kind of stuff, it seemed like those two things were at war, and I want to see TSM kind of marry those things, shorten their mid game. I think you can really see how this team ideally wants to play, especially from Brox's early pathing. I said prior to the split, Kabe was a really good fit for this team if they want to go topside. They've shown that they pretty much want to go topside. So I mean, ideally, when I talked about FlyQuest earlier, I talked about how you can see how they want to play. You can see the team that they want to be. I think you can also see that with TSM, and this is an incredibly talented team that has the potential to, I think, can at least beat C9 in a best of one. I mean, I really like the platonic ideal of this TSM. I can't get over what this team can be, and it's not because they're a superstar roster we look at TL, right, and we think of that as a star-studded lineup. This isn't necessarily TSM grabbing every single super good player, the best players, etc. But I do think if this team figures out that play style that they seem to want to play, I think they can be very, very good. And I think due to that, they should be able to beat EG tonight, especially since when I look at Bang, I think he's a great AD carry, I mean, historically especially, but I don't see him as a super strong laner. And Kabe is someone who's just going to sit there, he's going to farm, he's going to hold lane, and he's going to do damage later. That's kind of his bread and butter. And I don't think that they'll aggressively attack Kabe enough. And if they keep going, if TSM keeps going topside, I think that's where they can get ahead and then snowball the game from there.
The Chrono Show in our Twitch chat says, have to say, Johnson is actually Pog on Aphelios. So I guess for the purpose of Tyler's hair, if it's Aphelios the rest of the way, doesn't get paid.
You would hope so.
Johnson plays it, then maybe there's still an MVP conversation there. Funny comment here from Salesman. Hello, Nicole. Jack here. No refunds. Here are our predictions for Monday Night League.
Yeah, Team Liquid, high five.
Wow, I wonder, Evil Genius's TSM. Come on.
I didn't. Okay, so by the way, I did not know everyone else's picks. I picked mine blind, not knowing what everyone else was going to pick.
You knew.
I didn't. But I am on the EG hype train because I do think that is a team that if they go 50-50 or a little bit better, that is a good first split for them.
So that's it for us here on the Rift Rewind. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you to Tyler and Emily in Los Angeles for joining us. Thank you, Darren, for joining us. And thank all of you for watching us and for commenting in Twitch chat. We always appreciate it. Don't forget, every single Monday night, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, 90 minutes live on Twitch, on the ESPN app, on YouTube, and on Twitter, getting you set for Monday Night League and talking about the biggest topics that you want answers to in analysis in League of Legends. We'll be back next Monday. See you then.